We're recording, and that has started. Thank you, Adrian. Um, yeah, so we are here to talk about the 2023 Media Justice Network Fellowship. Um, we are excited to see some familiar folks and some new folks here. Like Teresa mentioned in the chat, we'd love for you to introduce yourselves and get to know where everyone is coming from. And in the meantime, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Media Justice and the Media Justice Network from which this fellowship is housed. So Media Justice is a national advocacy and organizing leader for racial, economic, and gender justice in communications, fighting for media control, access, and power for diverse communities. We lead the Media Justice Network, which is over 70 social justice, media, and arts organizations, grounding the intersectional fight for justice for just media in Black and Brown communities across the country. And with that, I'm going to share our agenda for the next hour. We are going to kick it off with some introductions from our network team. And then I will get into the fellowship, the 2023 fellowship, everything from the history, the purpose, the application itself, and the experience of it. And then, of course, we're going to have time for question and answers. So yeah, that is our agenda. I'm going to check on the chat briefly. Awesome. Yeah, I see folks are introducing themselves. Wonderful. So I'm going to kick it. Well, I should introduce myself, actually. I've been talking without introducing myself. I'm Dulani. I'm the National Political Education Manager here. I manage our learning community for the National Network, as well as leadership development opportunities like this fellowship. And with that, I will pass it over to Teresa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Teresa Basilio. I use she, her, ella pronouns. I'm the Network Strategies Director here at Media Justice, so I oversee the full network, our administrative and programmatic work, and I'm part of the leadership team also in the organization, and just really happy and excited for this next round of fellows. I'll pass it to Adrian.
All right. Hey, folks. My name is Adrian. I am the membership organizer at Media Justice. I've had the pleasure of being here for a little bit over 3 years. I'm in Oakland, better known as Lonely Land. And my role here is to work with our network team to mobilize, steer our national Media Justice Network. So today you will hear a lot actually about the Media Justice Network and our members. If you have questions about member organizations or how to join the Media Justice Network as a representative of the organization, feel free to check out the link in the chat. You can also reach me at Adrian, ADRIAN, at MediaJustice.org, and I'm happy to set up a chat with you separately to talk more about our network. So thank you, and I will send it back to you, Dulani.
Thank you, Adrian. And we have one more team member who is not feeling well and not with us today. His name is Jack. Jack is fabulous and a wonderful member of our network, supporting us in all things administrative. And with that, I'm going to jump right into information about the fellowship. I'm going to go over about, you can think about this in 3 sections. Well, first I'll say this beautiful image that you see on the side is our class of 2022. We had an amazing cohort of fellows, and that you can learn more about them. There's a blog that Teresa just, a link just dropped in the chat to learn more about our inaugural class. And so today I'm going to go over the history and purpose of the fellowship and eligibility. I'm going to go over the application questions and the selection criteria. And lastly, I'll go over the actual fellowship experience, what that entails and what the expectations are. So I'm going to start off with the history and purpose. The history is that the fellowship comes out of the Media Justice Leadership Institute. This was back when Media Justice was called the Center for Media Justice, and when the network was called Magnet, Media Action Grassroots Network. And it was considered like a small but mighty and powerful boot camp where grassroots leaders from all over the country would get together to share skills analysis for movement building, but most importantly, to break isolation and build community. And so the purpose of the fellowship continues in the spirit of that institute, and that we are doing this to build the leadership and power of the Media Justice Network. And specifically, we're looking to build the leadership of the next generation of folks. And we want to support folks in advancing media justice related projects that build community power. And so by next generation, we mean that we are prioritizing inviting new people into the media justice movement. The fellowship isn't for sort of long time established folks in the media justice field. So that is a little bit about our history and purpose. Next year's fellowship area of focus is racialized disinformation. Some examples of that you see here. What we mean by this area of focus, that could look like focusing on propaganda, focusing on anti-trans narratives, medical disinformation, climate change, election disinformation, anti-immigrant narratives. These are just a handful of examples, but really we're interested in the work that applicants are doing in their communities and what they want to focus on, what is most relevant to the work that you're doing in the context of combating racialized disinformation. And with that, the eligibility is that all applicants must be nominated by an organization in the Media Justice Network. Like I said, we are wanting to build the leadership and power of the Media Justice Network, and so that is how the eligibility works. That doesn't mean that that anyone has to be staff of a Media Justice Network organization to apply. But that's where the nomination comes from. And I see Teresa dropped in the chat a link to our network. We have an online directory of all the organizations in our fabulous network. So that is our first section of the info session in terms of the purpose, the eligibility, and the history. I'm going to move on to the application. Of course, as you have questions that might be coming up, we will absolutely have time for them shortly. So the application, there's a link to the application that is dropped in the chat. Thank you, Teresa. It is through Form Assembly. And so you can click on that to get a sense of the application. I'm going to go over sort of the narrative questions in the application with you to give you a little preview and a sense of what we're asking and why. The first one is asking about your background and the communities you are a part of. It's one of our favorite questions. It's how we get to know you and what you're about. Communities refers to anything from issue-based work that you organize around, or local communities that you're a part of, identity-based communities, anything you can share about where you're coming from, the work that you do, who you feel connected to, and why. The second question really gets into the focus of our fellowship next year, which is racialized disinformation. We want to know how you feel impacted by the issue, how you feel that your community is impacted. We want to know specifics. We want to know what your stake is in engaging in this topic for several months. This next question is where you would submit a project proposal describing what you intend to work on over the course of the fellowship. And we're asking for you to clearly identify a problem that you're trying to solve, the community impacted, and the proposed solution. And definitely, it's a really important part of the application. We are looking for strong project proposals, kind of well thought out projects that demonstrate that you are rooted in a community, that you understand what you're trying to tackle, and that this fellowship will help you do that. Go over a few other of our narrative questions. We want to know what you hope to accomplish as part of the fellowship. What's going to happen from point A to point B in terms of what you will have accomplished. We want to know what you think participation in the fellowship, how that will have an impact on your community, on the nominating org, or the larger movement. Sometimes folks are doing some type of work that the project enhances, and it's a part of a larger project or a larger mission and vision. And so we want to know about that. And last but not least, we will be asking how you're going to balance fellowship responsibilities with your other commitments, because the fellowship is definitely a big commitment, and following through on a project is a big commitment. And so we want to hear from you how you intend to balance those responsibilities and follow through with your commitment. Those are the application questions that you can expect. And then in terms of the ideal candidate, a lot of this can be found on our FAQ section as well on our website. Thank you, Teresa, for dropping that link in the chat. But I will go over them here as well. We are looking for folks who have a demonstrated commitment to BIPOC and working class communities, a demonstrated investment in building power on local, regional, national, and/or global levels. We want folks who have articulated why this fellowship, why now? What is your stake in combating racialized disinformation? We are looking for strong project proposals, as I mentioned, and we are looking for folks who can truly commit to the dates and the responsibilities of the fellowship. And now I will pivot to the last kind of segment of this, which is giving you a sense of the fellowship experience and the expectations. I will start with the structure. This is an 8-month fellowship. So it goes from February through September. The application, as you might know, is due November 9th, and folks are notified no later than December 7th. And so it is an 8-month fellowship. The structure involves cluster intensives. And what we mean by that is that we have these dates, these cluster dates that are 3 days of being together, learning from the boldest and fiercest movement leaders around the issues that we're discussing. So we have workshops, we have pod meetings. I'll get to that in a second, what I mean by that. But there's 4 clusters. And there's one in February, in April and June, and then in September. So those are 3 days in a row in those 4 months where we are all together. And then there are also some pod meetings or workshop days in between those clusters. So yes, a key part of our fellowship structure is that we have mentors and pods. We have not announced the mentors yet for next year, but you can learn about our mentors from the previous year. And each mentor has a pod of 3 fellows. And so within your pods, you will get peer support, mentorship support as you work on your projects, and you'll be giving and receiving support in your pods. And of course, projects. This fellowship supports projects that have a vision of building community power. And I will say a little bit more about projects and the focus of next year. As I mentioned, we're focusing on racialized disinformation. So we want folks to really walk away with some concrete skills in identifying and tracking misinformation and disinformation, in narrative mapping, and in building narrative power. Also, the key kind of driving questions for projects are, what is the story of a disinformation impacting community? What is the solution? And how will my community be engaged in the solution? We want folks to enter their projects with these driving questions. And I'm just going to check the chat. Yes, thank you, Teresa. Those are our mentors from last year that you should definitely check out. And there's also, I believe, yes, the cluster dates. Thank you for those. And at the end, we have a fabulous graduation. This is a candid shot from our graduation that took place for our inaugural cohort this past July. And I'm actually going to share a video we made for graduation. It's a 2-minute video. And then we will head into your questions. Adrian, if you could give me a thumbs up on the sound, that would be great. Oh, thumbs down. Thank you. Let's see. Give me one moment. Check out those links while I look at issue here. Da, da, da. Sound. All right, let's try this again. Hey, it's Dulani, and I'm excited to announce the MediaJustice Network Fellows Class of 2022. The MediaJustice Network Fellowship builds the leadership of the next generation of organizers and activists. The fellowship comes out of the MediaJustice Leadership Institute, which brought together grassroots movement leaders from all over the country to build a stronger movement together. The class of 2022 consisted of 4 brilliant mentors and 12 incredible fellows. Mentors supported fellows in applying insights from the fellowship to create their own project. Fellows' projects were
inspiring and authentic,
multi-platform, passionate, and intimate.
Fellows brought their local context to contribute to a media justice analysis of the current media and technology landscape. They learned about movement strategies to fight big tech and build people power. Here are some of their takeaways from the fellowship.
Community vision is essential.
Build power where you are.
Community media drives change.
It's diverse, intentional community.
Strategy must be grounded in community love.
Community learning and network weaving is community building and community healing.
We know that building community is the first step in building power. We know that investing in grassroots leaders of color is how we win. Fellows are bringing
A human-centered and intentional approach.
Surveillance, policymaking, mapping violence against our communities. The fellows brought it all to the table.
Join us in celebrating the inaugural class of MediaJustice Network Fellows.
All right. And with that, we're going to move into your questions. Yes, great enthusiasm for that video. Ophelia is our digital content producer and is amazing, very talented. Aha, yeah, Priya, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for that presentation. I was wondering if the projects have to be directly related to the work we do at our sponsoring organization, or can we kind of forge our own project that might be a little bit veered away from that?
Oh, that's a great question. No, it doesn't have to be directly linked to the programming of your host organization or nominating organization. Yeah, as long as you are putting forth a clear vision and for your proposal, that's what matters. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Mani. I use all gender pronouns. Thanks for the presentation, y'all. I think it's super helpful. I'm curious to know what is sort of the rubric or the criteria for the proposal. Are there some sort of like guardrails or expectations that we can look forward to when we're designing the proposal?
That's a great question. I think painting a clear picture of what's driving the project, who you might be working with, what are your goals within the project? Are you trying to create something in particular? Is there a strategy that you have in mind? Yeah, just giving us a sense of what you're trying to do, who you're trying to do it with. Yeah. Do you want to add anything, Teresa?
No, I'm sorry. I was trying to, there was another question in the chat too, so.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to highlight that, but I didn't have anything to add.
Okay. Does that help? Do you want to, is there anything else around that you would want to ask, Mani?
No, I think that's really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about questions, so I might have another one in a sec.
Sweet, yeah. And then
Trinity asked about, are you looking for folks with experience or open to folks who are somewhat new to the space? And I wrote open to folks who are somewhat new, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to expound on that.
yeah, absolutely. We love new people. we consider this a leadership development opportunity, and a way to invite new people into the media justice movement. We know that folks are coming from a lot of different backgrounds, maybe offline organizing, or our network is really diverse too, in terms of there's independent media folks, there's policy folks, there's different types of movement building organizations regionally or globally, and we want our cohort to reflect that, and we want to support new people in their leadership. So all the political education and skill building we do and community building we do, it really is inviting new people to the table. So thank you for asking.
There's another raised hand.
Oh yeah, please, Peruth. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Peruth, I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much. This is Peruth Navidya calling in from Uganda. I'm really excited to be part of this space. I only have 3 questions to inquire with. One, I just want to confirm if the recording is going to be available.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then the second one I wanted to ask, on the campaign against racism, equal health, and we operate like globally from different global settings across the world. And we are not part of the network, unfortunately. So I think we have to seek for a nomination from an organization that has been part of that know much of the work that we do, which is much like Highlander. So I was just inquiring if we are seeking for a nomination, does Highlander have to nominate, in case we are like 2 or 3 who are applying, does the organization that is nominating need to nominate each and every one of us with a reason, or they can nominate all of us at once? So it's just something I'm wondering about, in case they're to nominate us for being part of this fellowship, and I apply, and maybe my other colleague also applies. Do they nominate us as individuals or as a whole group? And maybe the very last one, which I think is very, very important, is that I looked at what the fellowship is looking at, and I think it has an element of we're actually focusing on information that is designed to obscure issues that are relating with racism. And when you look at the campaign against racism and how it is designed, it looks at the systemic racism that is manifesting from the global governance to the local, which is like the global south, and the issues we discuss are pertaining the date. So aside colorism, aside discrimination on these other issues, we really dive so much into how these things actually affect health. And part of the things that were discussed in that were shared in the article COVID-19, we're talking about vaccine equity. So I'm just wondering, are we looking, if I would write a project that has an element of media in what we are doing, and it is about systemic racism, like racial capitalism, is it still given, or can it still give me a chance to be part of, can it get me through to be part of this fellowship? I was just wondering, I'm just inquiring whether it is confined to a few things, or we look at race from various perspectives. Yeah.
Thank you so much for these questions. I'll address the nomination question first. Each person needs a nomination letter. So it's part of the application process where each person has to upload a letter. And it is best if that letter is tailored to that individual. There are, in the FAQ, you'll see that the nominating organization, there's a question about kind of what should they be doing in that letter, and they really should talk about why they're nominating this person, any relationship they have with them, anything that they can speak to in regards to their leadership. So that's the first one, and then in terms of everything you talked about in terms of systemic racism, medical disinformation, and vaccine equity. These are all really important issues that we care about and work on. And so we would absolutely welcome a proposal related to that for sure. Yeah, let me know if there's, if I addressed everything you asked, and if any other network team members want to jump in, feel free.
I just want to point out there's two more questions in the chat right now.
Okay.
So Lily has asked, does media include interactive and social media?
Does media include interactive and social media? Yeah, I guess I'm curious if you mean in terms of projects, like when we talk about like a media-based project. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sorry, I found the raise hand button too, so that was a mistake on my part. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, no, I come from a social media video game background, so I just wasn't sure because it looks like it's more traditional media for the most part. If projects are considered, if they're more interactive media.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, we had one of our mentors last year, Betty. You did a couple workshops for our fellows on new media storytelling, and it was a lot of fellows loved it. It was about like place-based storytelling and technology. And so absolutely we welcome projects of all kinds of mediums as long as, you know, there's a case for why this medium, and yeah, what are your goals and all of that. So absolutely. And social media is a huge part of kind of within the skill building that we're going to offer in terms of research skills around tracking and identifying disinformation that is very much social media based.
And I see also a follow-up from Manny. What advice do you all have for receiving the nomination? I am specifically asking for advice as someone who is new to this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely take a look at the network map. Sometimes we're in relationship and we, you know, didn't necessarily know. You might have relationships with folks within the network, and reaching out and asking, letting them know that you're interested in applying, asking for the nomination. Yeah, are there folks in the network that you feel like you might have a relationship with?
Yeah, so I don't think, like, how do I say this? I think I'm more so asking about like the ask. So, and also, is there like a specific, like, let's say someone is affiliated with BYP 100, like, do they have to be staff members of that organization? Who has sort of the, I don't know how to articulate this, but like, who has like the pull to be able to write the nomination?
That's a great question. Yeah, you definitely don't have to be a staff member of the nominating organization. You can reach out to any staff member of the organization to write you a letter. It doesn't have to be from the executive director. It can be from anyone at that organization that you feel kind of comfortable reaching out to, who can really speak to you know, why they're nominating you. It always helps when there's a previous relationship and they can speak to their, you know, the person's leadership qualities and the faith that they have that this person is gonna be an excellent fellow.
Yeah, and I would add, so it doesn't have to be a staff person as long as it's somebody who's intimately involved with the organization. So it could be like a volunteer or a board member who's, you know, who's very knowledgeable of the work and is deeply engaged in the work. Because I recognize that for some of our member organizations, there are volunteers who are intimately involved in the organization as much as staff people may be in other ones. So it's really about that. It's about their relationship to the organization and their relationship to you.
Gotcha. Thanks, y'all.
Cool. And I want to hop in and answer one question, if I may, from the chat. So there was a question from Trinity, just confirming that we can work for the org that nominates us. We can go ahead and say yes. This definitely happened last year in our fellow cohort, but that just kind of happened to be. So just, you know that we take all applications seriously and look at your skills. But yeah, if you're a staff member, that won't be held against you or like give you privilege or yeah.
Thank you. And I see another question from Priya about the context. Is it confined to the US or can we pursue a more internationalist focus on the global South? We would love an internationalist focus. Absolutely. We are in the empire, so we are definitely into solidarity for sure. These are great questions. Any other questions?
Delani, can you talk a little bit about the fact that we are doing this as an online piece and what the potential for that too? Or I think maybe Priya might have another question too, maybe.
Yeah, sorry. I just had another question. Could you name maybe like 1 or 2 projects from last year, like describe them? Yeah, I'm just curious about what kind of projects people pursued.
Yeah, absolutely. Just also a note though that the focus last year was broader than racialized disinformation. We included surveillance and digital equity as core issues as well. And so some project examples, we had a fellow work on a guide for tenants who were dealing with landlord technology, surveillance issues from landlords, and I heard recently an update that it's evolving into more of a storytelling project, so that directly affected tenants are talking about the impact of surveillance. So that was one. We had someone from the Navajo Reservation work on doing some research into the policies that affect the lack of internet infrastructure. And it was both kind of collecting stories as well as doing some policy research for like a written multimedia piece. We had someone create work on a website that was both a policy tracker for anti-trans legislation as well as like a narrative project for combating anti-trans narratives. Yeah, sort of a handful of projects. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, Teresa dropped a link of a blog post that goes over like a handful of projects, not all of them, but some of the ones I just mentioned, I think are in there. And then Teresa, you wanted me to talk about the online aspect of.
Right.
Yeah, so it is due to the pandemic, it is an online fellowship. There is hope for the potential, if it's safe to have an in-person gathering at some point in the fellowship. And, if that were to happen, that would, of course, be something that Media Justice organizes and provides, covers the cost for. But yeah, it is all virtual and online. We do ask in the application what access needs folks have. So if folks need live captioning or language translation or ASL, we will definitely provide that if needed. Is there anything else on that, T? Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Yeah, so a solid internet connection, yeah, internet access is needed for full engagement and participation. This is great, great questions. Yes. How long are clusters during the day? They're about 5 hours long with breaks built in. We do provide meal stipends during our cluster dates. And so, there's definitely lunch breaks and just breaks between workshops. And so they usually run 12 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions?
Hi, this is Trinity. I'm gonna unmute right now. So now this might sound like an out there question, but I guess I was just trying to look up what racialized disinformation was, and I'm trying to think about my project right now, and I want to make sure that, like, for me, I feel like it's a little specific, but I guess I'm wondering if it's okay that it's a little specific, or is racialized disinformation actually broader than what my scope may think? So I can explain a little more if you need more clarification, but
Yeah, please. Would you like us to talk a little bit more about what racialized disinformation is, and do you want to share more about like what you're thinking, and if that is racialized disinformation? Is that what you?
yeah. So again, I work for Herd, and I'm actually deaf myself, and I was just wondering about and like I was just thinking about, like, Herd, if you all don't know, we incarcerate. No, we don't incarcerate. We advocate for deaf and disabled people who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, and we support them, right? So that in itself is already a very narrow, broad field that Herd is pretty much one of the only organizations doing that work. And so I was just wondering if I would do a project that somewhat aligns with Herd, but more focused on Black, Indigenous, Latina, just like about the anti-disability narratives in families and growing up. I was just curious if that was, I don't want to say on track because I don't want to tell me I don't know if that's like wrong, to let me know whether or not that's fine. But I was just thinking about how it can harm our communities, because it has harmed. I'll talk about it more in my application, but it's something that is prominent in, I think, for me, I'm Black, so I see it. I've experienced it. So I'm just wondering if I'm on the right track, or could it just be about anti-disability narratives in general?
I think what you're describing is absolutely on track. I think like you mentioned, anti-disability narratives. Absolutely, there's dominant narratives that we encounter that harm our communities, and more often than not, right, they disproportionately impact communities of color. And so, and we get into this, as we, at some of the foundational work we'll do in the fellowship is, just starting out with a shared understanding and analysis of racialized disinformation, and knowing that misinformation is when maybe there's not an intent, but kind of inaccurate, harmful narratives happen. And then disinformation is more targeted and specific that to disenfranchise certain communities. And so, and I think there's a lot of ways that that diverse communities experience many harmful narratives and that are both misinformation and disinformation. So, I know Teresa dropped a video in the chat, a link to a video. We did a workshop on racialized disinformation as part of our learning community. And so, yeah, I definitely encourage folks to check that out because it also gets into how this isn't a new issue, even if the terminology is new, that our communities have been experiencing this for a very long time. Propaganda, racist narratives, things that undermine our movements, that has been happening for a really long time. I also added a short definition in the chat that that just gets at the fact that this is false information that's deliberately and often covertly spread to influence public opinion or obscure the truth, and that racialized disinformation uniquely targets and disproportionately impacts communities of color. So yeah, all that to say, I think your project sounds great.
I think Manny has another question.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hey, what's up, y'all? So love the conversation. I just wanted to, and sorry if I know that we've spent time like talking about this already, but can we just high level like talk about like what are some of the competencies that we're hoping that fellows will achieve at the close of the fellowship? So by the end of the fellowship, we should have what?
Oh, absolutely. I think at the end of the fellowship, folks should feel really confident in knowing how to research and track disinformation, should really have a clear sense of how to support a campaign, honestly, because these narratives they impact us, and when we're trying to combat them, we're trying to achieve a larger purpose. And so a lot of our fellows from last year talked about how they learned a lot about organizing through the fellowship, that was a key component. And so all those organizing skills, but in a digital context. And so a really clear sense of, if you're trying to build narrative power, who are the players? Whose disinformation are you trying to target? What's the source? How can you identify reliable sources? How can you map out your narrative strategy? And if it makes sense, spread that awareness, that literacy, that power within your community to combat these larger narratives, to really almost be an ambassador for your community with these skills that you're trying to bring back to your community and engage them to combat the specifics of racialized disinformation.
Did you already, Dawn, did you speak to also like the piece, sorry, noisy here. The piece around like movement building relationships and having the kind of movement. Did you speak to that already?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't. Do you want to speak to that?
No, I'm, please.
please. Go ahead. Yeah, relationship building is a huge part of the fellowship. So I think folks being able to leave knowing that they're part of a larger movement, that they have relationships across the country with other organizers and activists who are working on similar issues, or maybe different issues in a similar way, and to break isolation, to build that community that we truly want to last, beyond the course of the fellowship. So that is a huge goal as well. That we are a movement building organization, and that means we are dedicated to bringing more and more people into the movement, expanding the movement, and fostering strong relationships across movements.
Good show. Thanks, y'all.
Other questions? We have a few minutes. Folks have other questions. Yeah, thank you for coming. Yeah, folks are welcome to head out if you need to, but we definitely have a few minutes if you have any other questions. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mani. Thank you, Trinity.
Thanks, y'all. And definitely, if there's other questions that come up, please let us know. So who should we direct that application questions to, Delani?
Yeah, you can email fellowship@mediajustice.org. And yeah, and we will definitely get back to you.
Looking forward to getting your applications.
Yeah.
Yay. Thanks everyone for joining us, and friendly reminder, this is recorded, so we'll also have this available for folks.